so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need, the sun and the rain and the salmon in the sea. The Lord is good to me. Amen.
Please pass the secret sauce.
You pay attention there, okay?
Oh,
You silly
it's
buddy.
full. Be careful.
Okay, guys.
The Kopchak family live in Cordova on the shores of Prince William Sound, Alaska. It's one of the most beautiful places on Earth. They're fishermen who live a hard but idyllic life.
This is a unique place on Earth. There are plenty of places that have roads and McDonald's and what have you, but we live in a town where we know everybody else. There's no lock on our door. My car key is in the ignition, the truck key's in the ignition. There's no road in or out, so it's just our community. And it's a very simple equation, you know. The world is hungry and we feed them good food, the best. and that's really precious too.
But the lives of these people and their community, their businesses and those simple equations have been forever changed. When shortly after midnight on March 24, 1989, the oil tanker Exxon Valdez ran aground on Bligh Reef in Prince William Sound.
11,300,000 gallons of crude oil has spilled into the calm waters of Prince William Sound off of Alaska. An oil tanker trying to...
It was a gorgeous day. Couldn't be happening. And yet all over town when you went out, people said, did you hear? Did you hear? It's on CNN. You can check. I mean, it's for real. And you could look over at perfectly blue skies and know that just on the other side of the mountain, something was happening.
There were slicks absolutely everywhere. It was the whole western end of the Sound was inundated with giant ribbons of oil. I mean, just huge beaches and bays were just full of it. It was more than you can imagine.
We were concerned, so that with a friend we chartered a plane to go look over the Sound. And we were in tears by the end that we'd heard the Exxon representative saying they had 20 skimmers out there cleaning up oil. But we were out there, and there were 3 of them. And that was it. And we knew they were lying.
On behalf of Exxon, I wish to express our regrets for the anxiety and inconvenience caused by the grounding of Exxon Valdez. I want to assure everyone that Exxon is mobilizing all available resources to mitigate the impact from this incident.
What was happening actually is one of the greatest pieces of eyewash that probably this country's ever seen. You had these glib-spoken, tall, good-looking Texas and Louisiana executives from Exxon Shipping and Exxon Oil. And these people were telling you that everything was in order because that's their job.
You have had some good luck and you don't realize it. You don't have the Glacier Bay, you have Exxon. And we do business straight.
But this was not the case. While the oil spill was 4 years ago, Prince William Sound and its community have been dealing with the environmental and economic consequences ever since, locked in a bitter battle with the world's largest corporation, Exxon, and the way they do business.
Hi, Rob. How you doing?
Oh, just being in the way.
Is this the end?
I don't know. What do you think? Last opener?
For me, I'm gonna go make a round tour and be home for kickoff.
It's the last day of the '93 fishing season. It's been another disastrous year for Cordova's fleet. But RJ heads out into the gathering gloom of the Sound one more time to do what he loves best, to cast his nets to the sea. Each year, men die out here in an occupation that's regarded as the most dangerous in all of America. These men have been bringing their boats into the Sound for generations, chasing the king of fish, salmon. And often quite on their own out here, they've had to brave 100-mile-an-hour gales, 20-foot swells. And all that's been for naught, because now they face an enemy against which they're totally helpless, and that's oil. And many of the men out here since the spill of March '89 have found themselves going slowly bankrupt. It's
been a slow death rather than a fast death. We're still able to catch some fish, but we haven't had the kind of numbers of fish and the kind of price that it takes to stay alive. So a lot of people are losing their boats and have their homes in jeopardy now.
Are many of the people now who fish this sound, as over the years what's happened has finally sunk in, are many of them sort of bitter or angry about what's happened?
Oh, there's a tremendous amount of bitterness. It's like the stress shock that a lot of combat troops felt. This is a slow attrition of people's emotions. It didn't happen all at once, but we're all wound up tight. It's real hard. It's real hard.
Phil Leon is on the brink of financial ruin. His boat is designed to solely work the sound, but the fish that were there are gone.
It has put everybody basically out of business. I mean, everybody's scrambling to try to hang on to what they have. If they had a little bit of cash in the past, that's been all used up. The banks are looking hard at foreclosing on, I would think, over half the fleet is in that trouble.
Now, you're a seiner, which means that basically all you do fish is the sound. So how has it affected you?
Well, I can't make a living. I mean, I've got 3 small children. I'm trying to figure out how I can put food on the table. I mean, I'm scrambling just the same as everybody else in trying to get refinanced and talking to bankers and talking to lawyers and tax accountants, and it's very, very stressful. You live this day after day after day. There's no end to it.
A number of boats here have already been seized. In 1989, a seine fishing permit was worth $300,000. You could get one now for $85,000. In 1988, Cordova was the nation's 8th largest seaport. It's now slumped to 28th. And as far as this community is concerned, it's all due to the spill. Since 1990, in dollar terms, the catch has fallen from 46 million to just 5. Last year, only 30% of the salmon returned. This year, only 20% came home. And the herring season was cancelled. The few fish found were diseased.
Fishermen had never seen fish acting like this before. And still we're having problems with birds and we're having problems with otters. And so if you look at all these different pieces, suddenly the puzzle starts coming into focus, and it looks very much like we're having long-term damage from the oil spill 4 years ago.
Stretching some 800 miles across the wintry wilderness of Alaska, from the oil fields on its northern shore, is the Alyeska oil pipeline. It's owned by the giants of the oil industry and was built despite trenchant environmental opposition. Approval passed the US Senate by just 1 vote. When the billion-dollar project, its terminal and its tanker traffic through Prince William Sound was first proposed 20 years ago, it was the community of Cordova that led the opposition.
Not fought to stop the oil pipeline, but fought to get the highest standards possible, in place for the ships, for the way pipeline was constructed, how they were going to transport it out, everything. It's in the record.
Teeny Anderson has an electronics business in Cordova. He's a Native American whose family have lived on the Sound for generations. But he's not the only one who's angry, who remembers the promises.
Well, I would say straight off that you have to really question everything they say. Take nothing that the Exxon or Alyeska, the consortium of companies that operate the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, say for truth.
Ricky Ott is a commercial fisher who also has a PhD in marine pollution.
We were promised that there would be safe transportation of oil. We were promised that the oil companies would have the state-of-the-art cleanup equipment. We were promised that there would be trained people and everything would be operated as safely as possible, one of the safest operations in the world.
Oil is the power that runs Alaska. There are no state taxes, courtesy of its oil bonanza. The Alyeska Consortium and its pipeline deliver 25% of the US domestic oil production to its terminal at the port of Valdez on Prince William Sound. the whole operation has been the source of numerous environmental breaches and complaints. But the biggest scandal is that whatever regulations were waived or breached, whatever guarantees they gave, Exxon and its Alyeska partners knew that as the Exxon Valdez left this terminal for the last time, they could not contain its toxic cargo.
We have had prior discussions with the state of Alaska.
In meetings conducted 8 months before the spill, Exxon and its fellow pipeline owners discussed what they could do about a spill in Prince William Sound. Documents obtained by the ABC reveal that they knew they did not have the capacity to deal with a spill and decided not to spend the money to acquire that capacity, despite their legal responsibilities, and they decided to keep that situation secret. They said further efforts in the Prince William Sound would be limited to the use of dispersants, and any additional effort would be the responsibility of the spiller. We informed Exxon of these areas of interest before we interviewed Otto Harrison, Exxon's representative with Alyeska, who was also general manager of the spill cleanup.
David, I only arrived there on the 12th day. Actually, I was in Australia when that occurred. And there's a lot of information about what happened in those first few days, and I'm just not the right guy to comment on it. What I do know is that we had government-approved contingency plans under which Alyeska and all the shipping operations were involved, were approved by the government at that point.
But it was the way Exxon and its oil partners operated that became the subject of an investigation by a committee of the US House of Representatives. That committee found that the Alyeska group, including Exxon, had breached the undertakings they'd given under the oil spill contingency plan, and that they'd broken the law by filing misleading information. Chuck Hamill knows only too well how the oil industry operates. An oil executive himself, he blew the whistle on many environmental breaches committed by Alyeska and its oil company owners.
At the time of this meeting, 8 months before the spill, Alyeska owners, Exxon, Arco, and BP alone, just those three owners, were earning in excess of $8.9 million a day after taxes from their activity in the North Slope and the oil moving into the pipeline to Valdez. Now that's a lot of money. And you're talking about greed here. They didn't want to put a nickel back into the promises. They were just milking this thing for all they could get.
The failure of their initial response meant that Exxon was now facing a huge task, chasing the slippery ribbons of oil miles across the Sound. But they did try, even if the methods were primitive and conceived in desperation. Individual rocks were cleaned by hand. The bay was hosed down with boiling water, killing what remained of the delicate ecosystem. In their helplessness, Exxon threw vast amounts of money at the problem. At one stage, they had 500 boats and 11,000 workers chasing the ooze.
One has to admit that after the damage was done, that Exxon's contractors did a commendable job in trying to diligently clean up the oil that was available on the surface. But for the first 2 months, chaos reigned. And that's when the damage was done.
While their financial survival is a very important part of the story of the people of Cordova, what they're really fighting for is their life. While the Exxon Valdez spill has become the most studied accident of all, the locals have no doubt it's the oil that has spoiled their world.
I mean, I've been fishing out here for over 30 years, and I think I know, I've just got a feeling that things are not the way they used to be. There's no plankton in the water, there's no jellyfish. I don't think there's a food source for the fry that are being released from the hatcheries or the fry that are coming out of the wild streams. I think they're dying before they hit the ocean, and that's why we're having these run failures.
Fisherman's Claims. Good morning, how are you?
The world that's now invaded this place is one of lawyers and legal procedures. The people of the Sound, in pursuing damages claims, find themselves mired in a sea of paper as Exxon's hundreds of lawyers seek the most minute financial records.
For the last 4 years, we're just weekly and monthly, we've been having to come up with more records. And they've been putting people through depositions. So you're not allowed to forget it. They're not allowing us to forget it. They're just constantly wiping your face, and you mess with us, no, I'll teach you a lesson. And that's exactly what they're doing.
They elected to sue us. We didn't sue them, they sued us. They're the ones who moved the whole process into litigation. It was a decision on the part of the fishermen to move it over into a court case.
A little over a month ago, the fishermen of the Sound became so frustrated that they stopped tanker traffic with a blockade.
Yeah, Roger, we know we're going to get asked to move, that's a given. Yeah, that's right. Well, we've come this far here, guys. You know, I vote that we stay here until we bring this thing to a head. They're going to have to send a tanker in or out sooner or later here.
We went over there to make a statement. That's all it was. We want to say, hey, we're dying. We're trying to get Exxon to the table to talk to us.
But the only talking that's being done is by lawyers, and the court case is not scheduled till April 1994. For some, that will be too late.
It's like a farmer's field that's been poisoned after years of making it work. That's the hardest part. Are you going to catch a fish again? Is there going to be a chance? That's the hardest part.